Welcome back into another episode of Making the Leap. We are so glad you're here with us today. We are going to be talking today with a woman that is about to graduate college, ready to head out into her, I would say, new life, exciting next steps. And it's kind of an interview that I've been looking forward to, near and dear to our hearts. I know a lot of other people out there that are watching and listening. It's important to them because we're really wanting to talk and focus on options that are out there, but also the what's next piece of things. We talk about getting kids through that K-12 experience, and then also how does that affect them as they move forward into their next steps, as they're what I call baby adults, but that's not meant condescendingly, just as now they have the real world, so to speak, in front of them. So we're so excited today to welcome Samantha Seal. She is a senior out of Texas at University of Texas in Austin. So very much looking forward to this. Her background has been biblical in nature, the way she was raised, how she went to school. And oftentimes, Samantha, welcome in as we're talking, oftentimes we've talked a lot about parents that have had their kids in public education, switched them out, started something new. But you have, one of the more, I would say, unique experiences, to us at least, where you started in kindergarten, carried on through, your senior year, and now you're out in the public realm in terms of education. So Samantha, with that, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Samantha, the question at hand here is, you had the background from start to finish in Christian education, more or less, but it was when you got to the University of Texas, Austin. That's not a biblical school, my friend. So this is what I think a lot of us who have taken our kids from public education, put them in a Christian school, hoping that will take root, but then they graduate and wind up at a University of Texas, Austin. What should we be mindful of as parents as we talk about that next step, senior year to college?
That's a really good question. I would say to prepare them for the battles that they're going to face on the college campus. It's better to go in prepared with the armor of God that we talk about, than be surprised by some of the other worldviews that they're going to face on college campuses. I was fortunate enough at Prestonwood Christian Academy to have that biblical worldview training through our Biblical Worldview Institute, through our Student Leadership Institute, where we talked about the hot topic issues in culture, like gender, like abortion, like critical race theory, poverty, social welfare, etc. And we were able to look at those cultural issues through a biblical lens, and then discuss how we would talk about those with other people who come from different backgrounds and have different worldviews than us. And so then I was prepared for those conversations I would have in the classroom, or with people that I would meet on campus, or even in Washington, D.C., where I'm interning right now.
Smart. This is smart. This is not about, again, we've talked about this on the show in the past, not about bubble wrapping. What you're saying is throughout your K through 12, well, maybe not throughout K through 12, but certainly in your later years, late, middle, early high school, through senior year, you started discussing tough, real world, secular stuff and what you would encounter when you got out there.
Mm-hmm.
And probably, too, I would say, not just what you would encounter when you got out of school, but you still are out in the world as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, encountering all kinds of things. And so just to kind of piggyback on what Chris was saying, we have to equip our kids to interact on whether they're talking about what was on TikTok or what they saw on TV or what's in the news.
You didn't feel shocked then, Samantha, to your point. You got to University of Texas, Austin, and it wasn't like you got the vapors and fainted. You were pretty well aware of what was coming down the pike.
Yes, I feel like I was pretty prepared for the battles I would face at UT Austin. I think what I was not prepared for, and what was almost more sad to face, was churches that twisted scripture to push their political or social agenda. That was not a battle I was prepared to face.
Wow.
Because I think it's maybe a new one since I've graduated high school in 2020. There are woke churches that I like to call them in Austin who will look at the Bible through a cultural lens rather than looking at culture through a biblical lens. And so when I was church hopping and trying to find a biblical community, that was really unfortunate to see happening in our Christian community here in Austin.
You can almost hear it. I can imagine. I can imagine what it was. Here's my guess. Churches in and around a university setting, a secular university setting, these churches are all trying to figure out, how do we get young people in here? And they start to evolve into the secular young person culture, the kind of woke, quote, welcoming, inclusive environment that completely neutralizes church doctrine and scripture. Is that about right?
Yes, absolutely. With hot topic issues that appeal to Gen Z, mainly gender, abortion, critical race theory.
When did you decide that you wanted to, because these are tough topics. Every topic that we've mentioned today in the last 4 minutes that we've been speaking to you, these are hard and they're heavy. I guess I had two questions. When did you decide that you wanted to not only kind of be surrounded by them in your profession, but how did you come to that point? I'm kind of curious on that story piece, because to say I'd like to go work in the belly of the beast, so to speak, and I want to go try to cause change, and be part of that positivity and that I guess kind of a reckoning for some places too. How did that come about?
I'll piggyback on the question just so we don't double up, because here's my follow-up, Samantha, to that is, like what she asked, followed up with politics generally. How does a woman of deep faith, raised in the faith, committed to it through her entire education, decide she wants to go into politics? Because having talked about it for a good long time in my career in talk radio, it's a cesspool, and nothing that I would ever think somebody who is of deep faith would want to participate in, quite frankly. So having said all that, as Christine asked, what led you to that?
It's a funny story, actually, because I was against going into politics my freshman year of high school when I started to be interested in communications as my major in college and potentially as a career. I started watching press conferences with my dad during the 2016 election and began to discover what public relations is, what a press secretary role would look like. And I really liked that role and I liked those skills. I was a theater kid growing up, so I liked public speaking. I loved writing, so I knew that was the path I wanted to go down. But I wanted to do it in the nonprofit sector or the corporate sector because, like you all are saying, I thought politics was a cesspool and I wouldn't survive there. But the Lord slowly softened my heart the rest of high school, and we actually started talking about current events in my junior year history class. And that was 2019, 2020. There were a lot of critical news events going on during that time. But we always looked at them through a biblical lens. And I was heavily involved in all of those discussions, and I enjoyed those discussions each and every day. And I began to slowly realize that maybe the Lord is calling me to politics. I realized there is such a great need for Christians to be a light in our dark nation's capital. And maybe I can be the light of the world there and the salt of the earth, like it says in Matthew. And then I tried it out freshman year of college. I interned in the Texas House of Representatives and I fell in love. Loved the fast-paced nature. I loved combining faith and policy, which are now two biggest passions in my life. And so I love that I can kind of bring back our country to the original Judeo-Christian principles that our country was founded on. But it is a cesspool. And so to kind of answer your second question, I have to make sure I have a community around me that continues to build me up in Christ and remind me that my identity is in Him alone. It's not in the work that I produce. And that is constantly pointing me back to the scripture when things can get really dark in the work that we do. For example, studying the war in Israel right now, that's really heavy to take in. And so I need that community around me where we can pray over the work that we do. We can pray over the articles that we write and the policy that we propose so that we are ultimately bringing glory to Him and reminding us who we're doing this for.
I don't mean to speak for you, but I think you'd agree with this. We just had a sermon not too terribly long ago from our pastor. That is not to say that you don't support the idea of people freely worshiping as they see fit in the country. That is not to say you want an established religion in the United States of any kind. We all understand our founding, if in fact you've studied it. That is to say your faith informs the policy and the politics that drive you, that are interesting to you. There is a difference, and I just want people to hear that, because I can suspect that the cynic would be listening to you and say, oh, well, there's another one who wants to go to Washington, D.C. and legislate her morality on me. They often like to say that, right?
Right. That is the common accusation of Christians in politics, but that's not what we're trying to do at all. There is a clear calling from the Bible on for Christians to be in politics. Like I was saying earlier, we're called to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And there are clear biblical evidences for policies like pro-life policies, like policies that support the family, that support hard work and things like that. But there is something called free will. We are not forcing those policies on anybody. We simply have the evidence, biblical and secular, to know that these policies work for America. They have brought prosperous times to America. And so we want to bring these policies back, and whether or not you want to follow them, you can suffer the consequences after. But that's up to you and your free will.
One of the things, I guess, when I get to talk with people like you that have experienced Christian education in a different way than the way our daughter has. We moved her at 7th grade, so we didn't have any of that the pre-K, the elementary, that kind of thing. But I'm curious, as I've been talking with people, I'd like to know just a little bit about what Prestonwood was like in terms of what's, the size, maybe even the demographics, because I think it's important for parents to hear and other students to hear what, all schools look different from one another regardless. And so I'd like if you could just share a little bit about what it looked like for you. What was your school experience as an elementary, early middle school style?
I loved my time at Preston Christian Academy. I was there for 14 years, like you guys were saying earlier. So I didn't know anything different. I think my favorite part was growing up with the same group of people from pre-K 4 to 12th grade. We call ourselves lifers when we graduate our senior year, but that means we've been with each other from preschool or kindergarten.
How many, Samantha? Sorry to interrupt you. How big was that school, or is that school?
By 12th grade, there's about 130 kids in each class. But I would say when you're in lower school and middle school, I think in lower school, I had maybe 50 people in my class, and then it kind of grows every year from then.
Oh, wow. So yours gets bigger. Schools. Okay. So yes. It is a bigger one and got bigger as you went versus some of the other places we've seen where it seems to shrink a little bit as students get older, as they move into sports and things, and they want more activities and they want this, but this is a bigger school. Okay.
I always hate to be inappropriate in asking this, but I ask it only because of your background. If ever the day comes that you decide to have a family, and again, I know that's personal, so you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I'm just curious, having had that K through 12 Christian education at Prestonwood, is that something, if you ever had a family, you would imagine for your own family?
For sure. I would definitely send my kids if the Lord ever blessed me with any to a Christian school, because I want them to have that biblical worldview training. And then I don't want them to be exposed to the indoctrination currently happening in our public schools as well. And just to piggyback off of the shrinking comment that you made, it's funny that you mention it, because we've actually had to increase our class sizes past 130 after COVID, because there's more and more students from public schools that want private school education, and more importantly, want that biblical worldview training.
I think that's huge. It's actually, when you were talking about you graduated in 2020, and I thought, if there was ever a time, on the one hand, my heart breaks for kids that did have to graduate, that kind of had to experience those last, like the junior, senior year, kind of with the nonsense and things that were happening all around. It is heartbreaking. But at the same time, I kind of think that's a God thing too, because you got to see the craziness around you and you can use it now as a catalyst versus something that I guess could have really been detrimental, and it has been detrimental for people everywhere. And so I just thought, wow, I bet, things kind of exploded in your area the same way they did for us in our areas with everything that was happening.
Except you came up in Texas. It's hardly fair because Texas is the India of the world. We were living in Pennsylvania, which is basically communist Russia. Texas, they say it, right? Texas is like a whole other country. Politically speaking, of course. Not to say you don't have your pockets. Lord knows Austin, right?
Austin.
We just talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad that you were able to share. I really did just kind of want to get some just general feel for what the school size was like. Did you have, this is also what we get asked. Everyone wants to know about the social scene and the sports scene, but you're bigger, but not every school, it doesn't matter sometimes on the size. It's not that doesn't always play into things. What were some of the activities? Like you said I liked what you said about being a lifer. You were there for all, for together with people since, being 5-6 years old. What were some of the different experiences that you think you had that were unique to a Christian school that maybe someone outside of that would not have had because of where you were?
Well, my favorite experience at Pressman Christian Academy that is not at any other school that I know of is something called Mini-Mester. And so we take the week before our spring break and we send our 7th grade through 12th grade students all across the world on mission trips to truly share the love of Christ and serve others, love our neighbors, and just be lights for him in the world. And so I had the special opportunity of going to Cuba my junior and senior year. Senior year, it was the week before the world shut down. So that's the last memory that I have with PCA before I graduated. So I got to use my Spanish skills because I had been studying Spanish since preschool there, and share the gospel in a different language, and truly just serve and connect with the people there that I now get to call family. And, we've learned about socialism and communism in our history classes. And so we also got to see the horrors of that firsthand in Cuba, and then discuss that and unpack that at night in our rooms, and talk about how, we don't want to let that happen in our country. And so there were kind of all these different facets to that mission trip, but the ultimate focus was just sharing the gospel, and to see so many people come to know him for the first time on those Mini-Mester trips around the world was just so special. And doing it, with my friends that I've known since preschool, and with teachers and mentors who have been with me from the beginning, in the highs and lows of life. It's just something I'll never forget.
I know you're a kind person, so I ask this through the prism of you being a kind person, Samantha. You get to U of T Austin, and you meet undoubtedly several of your peers who came up through a public school setting. You did not. So now you're interacting with folks like these. What was striking generally, painting with a broad brush? And again, I'm not meaning to malign. I'm curious what your observations were. What did you notice as differences, either a base of knowledge or behavior or attitude or worldview? Was there something in particular that really stood out to you, your background versus, say, a public school kid at the university?
I would say knowledge-wise, academically, there were some differences in skills, particularly writing skills. So that's more of a surface level one, but all the private school kids were just naturally stronger writers, because it's something, at least at PCA, that we hit on pretty hard. They want us to have writing skills that prepare us for college level classes. And, we have capstone papers that are, 10 pages long. And so we're ready for those hard classes once we get on college campuses. But also policy knowledge wise, it was interesting to start to have conversations about abortion and pro-life policies, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade as well. And just the misinformation that was going on in our public schools, especially around the conversation of rape and abortion. And I remember talking to one of my really good friends who is a very kind person and truly just wanted to learn. And, she said, Samantha, I know you disagree with me on this topic. Why should a woman who has been raped be forced to carry her baby to full term? And then I asked her a question back, because we learned the Columbo tactic at PCA, always just keep asking questions. So I said, well, why should the circumstances surrounding that child's life determine his or her right to life and success in life? She was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And so just that misinformation coming from a public school setting made me really sad, but also gave me the encouragement to continue fighting this fight.
That's really powerful. And I think that's one of the key components of what we're hoping for, moving just one of our children from the setting, just a generalized public school setting, is that ability, like you said, these different methods for thinking and for responding to tough questions. That is something that I see it based in the work that I do. I see evidence of a lack of thinking and a lack of critical thinking skills. So to hear that it's encouraging, I would say, more than anything, because that is a benefit to changing up some of the educational environments that kids are in, where bigger classrooms sometimes make it harder, or a teacher that maybe is overwhelmed and it makes that tough to have some of those conversations and to teach some of those tactics. And the teacher's hands are tied in a lot of those instances as well. Most of our kids have all come home and said, well, we have these topics, we can pick a topic and talk about it, but we can't talk about this. The teacher's not even allowing the topic to be introduced because they don't want what's going to come from it. And yet you, within your experiences, were able to not only learn, but then take that further in a college setting, in a place where someone was in a spot to really learn to think for themselves, and you had that ability to teach that. That's really powerful.
Let me ask you to play armchair psychologist, Samantha. You start school at a time where the world turns upside down with COVID. Everybody's terrified. In fact, I was just talking with my colleague Dinesh D'Souza about this. The thing so many people are motivated to allow government to grow and get intrusive in our lives, it's motivated by fear. You're afraid. As Christians, we're called not to be afraid. I wonder if you got the sense that you, steeped in a Christian education, K through 12, got to college. Did you find that your peers who did not have that same background and life experience, did you find them to be more fearful?
Yes, definitely more fearful, not just of the health circumstances during that time, but also about their future. Because we learned, in our Bible classes and just through our biblical worldview, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and supplication, that, the Lord has good plans for us, like it says in Jeremiah. But anybody who did not have that relationship with the Lord, or that knowledge of biblical foundations, were just filled with fear about what the future held for their academic career, for their professional career, for their relationships, for their family, for their financial circumstances, and the list can go on and on. And so I just tried to provide that hope for them that can only be found in Jesus Christ. And sometimes it was successful, and sometimes it just planted the seed, and hopefully somebody will come by later to water it. But definitely those who didn't have that biblical worldview were more fearful.
Did you ever hear that? Did you ever? I don't mean to embarrass you, and I know you don't like bragging about this stuff, and we're not supposed to be braggarts about it. But did you ever have anybody specifically say, "Boy, there's something about you. There's a calm about you. You've got it together." I mean, you exude it because I think. I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think your foundation is built on Christ, and so you carry that. And I would assume your peers, some of them, maybe even said as much to you.
Yes, they have. And that's been really special to hear. And I just always tell them, like, the reason I have such peace in such tumultuous times is because of the Lord. So I always try to bring it back to the Lord and not make it about myself. But it's good to hear that even when I'm going through trials and going through my own personal struggles, that the Lord is still working through me. and is able to be a light to others through me.
I really am thankful for this interview today. I think there are people, whether you're in, freshman year, senior year, out in, 47, whatever, wherever you happen to be, hearing some just biblical truth, where it is from, and how it can be infused into our daily lives, especially within the world of education, that is priceless. And I really want to thank you today for taking the time to speak with us about that, because that is the message that we are here trying to share, is that there are so many options out there. And, a K through 12 private Christian school is definitely one of them. And the benefits, I think, are tremendous. So thank you so much for that today.
And I will just close by asking this quick question, Samantha, because you chose not to go to a Christian college per se. So having that entire foundation built, and then you go to a what would be called, a secular traditional university. Do you recommend that in hindsight? And what would you say to Christian school parents similar to you? They brought their kids up, and now they want to go to the University of Colorado or something, and the parents are thinking, I don't know. Should parents rest in the confidence that they've brought them up correctly? Is that it?
I would pose the same question to them that an amazing mentor in my life posed to me when I was deciding between private Christian schools and secular schools for college. Do you need some more time in the temple, or are you ready to go to Babylon? And that's something that only a student can answer for his or herself. A parent can't make that choice. A teacher can't make that choice. The student can only make that choice with the Lord through prayer. And so I had to take some time to dig through the Lord's word, pray through that question until I knew the Lord was calling me to go to Babylon and be a light for him. And now he's calling me to the next Babylon in D.C.
Oh, man.
And be a light for him there.
Babylon with a capital B.
Exactly.
Well, what a story. Samantha Seal, a mutual friend, tipped us off to you. We were grateful to meet your acquaintance, and thanks for your time today on Making the Leap, Samantha.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate all the encouragement today, too.
Thank you. There is so much in there that I share. That's one of the benefits, actually, right, of you and I getting to go home, is that I can, anything I don't talk about here, I can be like, do you remember? That was awesome.
Process it a little bit.
Yes, but what a great statement, and something that just as a parent, I want to keep in my own head, where she kind of ended with her mentor saying to her, do you need more time in a Christian church setting? Do you need to go slower on things? Are you ready to jump off into a Babylon, or do you stay in the temple? That's powerful. That is a really great way to think of it, a good analogy to utilize as a parent, whether it's college, high school, homeschool, a sports team, an activity. I think that's a really good thing to think about.
Yeah, you'd like to think by, 18 years of age, with any kind of spiritual foundation, you'd like to think that most of us would be able to at least answer the question, I think I've got this, or I need more time. And, as Dennis Prager has said brilliantly, parents aren't God. We shouldn't beat ourselves up too much if our kids fall short, and we really can't do end zone dances and spike the ball and take all the credit when they do great. That's in God's hands ultimately.
It is. I don't know. I really am thinking about our 3 kids and letting them do some reflecting on, are you ready to take this on? I sat with one of our kids this weekend, the one who's in college, and he's busy writing a paper geared towards some of the statements that a teacher has made. He was not writing out of his own personal viewpoint, but he was writing what she was going to want to hear.
He was lying in a paper to please the teacher, rather than reflect what he actually believed.
There's a lot of people that would be like, why are you wasting your money? That's a topic for another day, but it does make me think then that he is aware. He is aware of what's around him. He's aware of kind of how how he needs to proceed. He wasn't losing sight of what his own beliefs were. And those are really important things, I guess, to consider as we move forward. But I appreciate.
If it's not
that.
if it's not compromising your own values, if you've got to play the game to advance yourself, then I guess that's
right. Because I was like, well, don't sink into that belief. And he's like, are you kidding, Mom? That kind of thing. But I appreciate it. But as our daughter starts looking forth to college and our middle son starts looking, it's really good reflection for everybody.
I'll be honest, though, it's never occurred to me. I don't know how many parents have ever done this or had a conversation like she just brought up. How many of us sit down and ask our kids, are you ready or do you need more time? Do you feel like you can go out there or where are you spiritually? And just kind of ask them to assess themselves. Maybe a lot of parents do that. It never occurred to me, to be honest.
Not from a spiritual capacity, we haven't. But again, I feel like, look, we always say we were late to the game on a lot of this. Yeah. So I think that's what this is about, though. You don't know what you don't know. You start to figure out what it is you're learning, do better. Our pastor has said a couple of different times in sermons, you have a choice here on where your kid goes for college. And it is not unheard of for a teacher, a college professor to undo in a semester what you've just spent years and years and years trying to solidify. And so I think that's a really good outlook, I guess, to have.
And it's important that we say, as Christian parents, sending our daughter to a Christian school, it's not our expectation that the Christian school raise our children. Right. It is that the Christian school would be a complement to our values.
Right.
And there's a distinct difference. The expectation that our daughter will be bulletproof because she went to a Christian school, that is not accurate. I think that would be a mistake for any parent to think.
So it's good. It's just good, I think, good reflection, good thoughts. I'm glad that we're able to do that. Like you mentioned that we learned of Samantha through another guest that we had on with us for the podcast. That's always an option for anybody to send us ideas, thoughts, here, check out this person, check out this school. This is a great program that this person has created.
We
love that.
Yeah.
We really have. And I'm excited actually at the amount of feedback that we've gotten from people saying, call this person, text this person. So please send us all that. The information is down below in the links. You can email us. You can comment on different posts where, I know there's a lot that's out there in social media. We'd love to hear from you at any time.
Share it.
Always, right? And the reviews on Spotify, the reviews with iTunes, Apple iTunes, that's always really important as well.
I always like to tell people, if you think this show has been a benefit to you in any way, I hope that you will encourage people to go back and listen to it from the beginning. I like every show we do, but sometimes I think, boy, if people just found us and they've never listened before, I hope they go back and listen to all the episodes because we've kind of grown and done our homework steadily over a year and some change. And so I think every one of these shows and guests like Samantha hopefully will be a benefit to you or someone listening.
And like you said, this food for thought. You don't know what you don't know. And so there's always, I think, an option to gain from that. So we thank you for your recommendations. Thank you for your contacts and connections with us. And as always, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please rate and comment on the show, as well as subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Making the Leap.